podcast.
Imagine it's 1820. The American frontier is shifting, and with it the soul of the Baptist church is fracturing. In the East, churches are getting fancy. They're starting missionary boards, Sunday schools, and theological seminaries. To the average person, this looks like progress. But to a man named Daniel Parker, sitting in a log cabin in Illinois, it looked like a betrayal of God. This episode is called The Two Seeds of Daniel Parker. Now, Daniel was what they called a hard shell, or old school Baptist. He was small, wire-thin man with eyes that seemed to burn through you. He was largely self-educated, but his mind was a steel trap for scripture. In 1826, he published a pamphlet called Views on the Two Seeds. This wasn't just a sermon, it was a declaration of spiritual warfare. He argued that from the moment of the fall in the garden, humanity was divided into two distinct genetic and spiritual lineages: the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This is the two-seed doctrine, and it wasn't just about who went to heaven, it was about who was even capable of being saved. If you were a seed of the serpent, you were born to burn. No amount of preaching, no amount of mission work, and no amount of Sunday school could change your DNA. This made Daniel the most hated man in the organized Baptist church. They called him a heretic. They called him a fanatic. But Daniel didn't care about the opinions of men. He was looking west. He was looking at a vast, wild territory called Texas, and he decided that if the civilized world didn't want his truth, he would take it to the wilderness. By 1832, Stephen F. Austin's colony in Texas was growing, but there was a massive legal wall. Mexico's law of April 6, 1830, was strictly enforced at this time. It forbade the immigration of more Americans, and more importantly, it strictly forbade the practice of any religion other than Catholicism. Even a Bible study in your own home was a risk for you being arrested. That's the environment Daniel Parker was walking into. But Daniel was a legalistic genius. He studied the Mexican Constitution and noticed a very specific wording. It forbade the founding of new Protestant churches on Texas soil. His thought is, if I can't build a church in Texas, I'll build one outside of Texas and just move it. It was the ultimate technicality. On July 26, 1833, in Lamonte, Illinois, Daniel gathered 7 people, his wife, his brothers, and a few close friends. They officially organized the Pilgrim Predestination Regular Baptist Church. They didn't just sign a book, they created a living, breathing entity. Then they loaded that entity into ox carts. They packed the church's minute book, which we still have today, next to the gunpowder and the flour. This journey wasn't a vacation. We're talking about months of grueling travel through the neutral ground, that lawless strip of land between Louisiana and Texas. They traveled through swamps and across rivers where the current could sweep a wagon away in seconds. Daniel's father, Elder John Parker, was with them, a veteran of the American Revolution, nearly 80 years old, still driving his own team. They were a tribe of hard shells, moving into a land that legally didn't even want them. When they finally crossed the Sabine River into Texas, they didn't hide. They settled first in what is now Anderson County, near Elkhart. They built a fortified church, log walls with gun slits. They had to be ready for 2 things: Mexican soldiers and Comanche raiders. During this time, Daniel is basically the godfather of the region. He's planting churches left and right, but always under the Pilgrim umbrella to to stay legal. He was a powerhouse. He was elected to the Consultation of 1835, which was the body that laid the groundwork for the Texas Revolution. He worked alongside Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin. But here is where his story gets Bobcat Cherry dark. While Daniel was in the halls of government, his family was building a legacy of their own at Parker's Fort, just a few miles away in Groesbeck. This happens to be the site of one of the most famous and brutal massacres in Texas history. On May 19, 1836, just weeks after the victory at San Jacinto, a massive war party of Comanches and Kiowas appeared at the gates of the fort. Daniel's father, John, went out to walk to them. They killed him instantly. They killed several other family members and kidnapped 5 people, including Daniel's 9-year-old niece, Cynthia Ann Parker. Now, Cynthia Ann is fascinating. She would go on to live as a Comanche for the next 24 years and mother to the great war chief, Quanah Parker. The massacre nearly wiped out the Parker clan, but Daniel, he didn't break. In his 2-seed worldview, this wasn't just a raid. This was the seed of the serpent attacking the seed of the woman. It hardened his heart and sharpened his resolve. He spent years trying to get his family back, but he never stopped preaching. As the Republic of Texas was born, Daniel Parker expected to be a founding father. He was elected to the 3rd Congress of the Republic in 1838. He arrived in the capital ready to represent the people of his elected counties. Unfortunately, he hit a wall he did not see coming. The Texas Constitution had a very specific clause, Article 5, Section 1, and it stated that because ministers of the gospel were dedicated to God and the care of souls, they should not be diverted from those great duties. Therefore, no minister could hold a seat in Congress. They used his own holy calling to keep him out of the government. And, of course, Daniel was furious. He argued that he was a citizen first. He had bled for Texas. He had smuggled his church for Texas, but the Congress stood firm, and they refused to seat him. This rejection pushed him further into his anti-mission stance. He began to see organized anything, government, missionary boards, schools, as a threat to the individual's soul. He became the voice of the forgotten Texan, the backwoods farmer who wanted to be left alone with his Bible and his land. Daniel Parker died in 1844. He had lived long enough to see Texas go from a Mexican province to a republic, and he died just as it was about to become a U.S. state. He is buried in the Pilgrim Cemeteries in Elkhart, a quiet place where the wind whistles through the oaks. You're probably thinking now that this 2-seat doctrine eventually died out, right? Too extreme even for the most Baptists. Well, by the 1890s, the 2-seed, in the spirit, Predestination Baptists were a vanishing breed. The missionary Baptists, the people who built Baylor University and the big city cathedrals, won the culture war. But Daniel's influence is still there. Every time you meet a Texan who is fiercely independent and deeply suspicious of big systems and stubbornly loyal to their tribe, you are seeing a ghost of Daniel Parker. He was a man who smuggled a church, survived a massacre, and challenged a republic. He believed in the 2 seeds, but he only ever planted one thing: a stubborn, unyielding Texas faith. The Pilgrim Church is still there today. It's the oldest Protestant church in the state, with a continuous record. Those minutes he wrote in the back of an ox cart, they're still there too. This has been Bobcat Cherry. I'm Zach Hansen, and next time you're driving through the East Texas pines, Keep an eye out for the bad seed, and remember the man who spent his life trying to outrun it. I always like to share 2 stories each episode. And to tell the story of the last and the greatest chief of the Comanches, we have to go back to a place we visited before, and that's the Parker's Fort. In 1836, the Parker family were the ultimate Texas pioneers, hard, religious, and stubborn. But on a bloody May morning, that pioneer spirit collided with the lords of the plains. This is where the story of the White Comanche begins. Among the captives taken that day was a 9-year-old girl named Cynthia Ann Parker, while her uncle Daniel Parker was off smuggling churches and fighting in the Texas Congress. Cynthia Ann was being assimilated into the Comanche tribe. She didn't remain a prisoner, she became one of them. She married a high-ranking chief named Peta Nocona. She wasn't just a stolen girl anymore. She was Nedua, and in roughly 1845, she gave birth to a son. That boy was Quanah Parker. His name in Comanche means fragrance or odor. He grew up in the Comancheria, a vast empire covering North Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. He was a child of the plains, a master of the horse, and a fierce protector of his people. But when he was about 15, his world was shattered. Texas Rangers raided his camp at the Battle of Peace River. They rescued his mother, Cynthia Ann, and took her back to a civilization she no longer recognized. She died of a broken heart, longing for her Comanche family. Quanah was left behind, an orphan of 2 cultures. By the 1860s, the Comanche tribes were being pushed toward extinction. The buffalo were being slaughtered by the millions, and the U.S. Army was closing in. Most chiefs were signing treaties and moving to reservations, but not Quanah. He joined the Quadi, the most isolated hardcore band of the Comanches. The Quadi were the antelope eaters. They lived in the Llano Estacado, the staked plains of the Texas Panhandle. It was a place so flat and featureless that white explorers got lost and died in days. But for Quanah, it was a fortress. Quanah rose to power not because of his father's name, but through sheer brilliance in battle. He was a master of guerrilla warfare. He realized that the old way of charging a line of soldiers didn't work against repeating rifles. He taught his warriors to move like ghosts. In 1874, Quanah led a massive alliance of 700 warriors against a group of buffalo hunters at a place called Adobe Walls. It was a desperate, bloody fight. Quanah was wounded, and for the first time, he realized that bravery wasn't enough to beat the industrial might of the United States. The Army responded with the Red River War. General Ranald S. McKenzie, a man the Comanches called Three Fingers, was set to hunt Quanah down. McKenzie didn't try to outfight the Comanches. He tried to outstarve them. This is the darkest chapter. McKenzie found their hidden camp in Palo Duro Canyon and did the one thing that could truly break a Comanche heart. He slaughtered over 1,000 of their horses. Without horses and with the buffalo gone, the Quadi were walking ghosts. In June 1875, Quanah faced a choice: watch his people starve to death in the Panhandle or lead them to the reservation at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Can you imagine that moment? The fiercest warrior on the plains, a man who had never lost a battle, deciding to walk into the enemy's fort. He didn't surrender because he was beaten. He surrendered because he was a leader. He rode into Fort Sill at the head of his people. His long hair braided, his head held high. The war chief was dead. The statesman was about to be born. This is the part of the Quanah Parker story that most people don't know. Usually when a chief went to the reservation, they faded away. But Quanah was a Parker. He had that giant intellect his uncle Daniel was famous for. He realized that if he couldn't beat the white man with a bow, he'd beat him with a checkbook. Quanah became a business mogul. He realized the reservation land was perfect for grazing, so he started leasing it to Texas cattle barons like Charles Goodnight and Dan Wagner. He simply charged them grass money, and within a few years, Quanah was one of the wealthiest men in Oklahoma. He even built a mansion, the Star House. This mansion had 10 rooms and huge white stars painted on the roof so he could show the generals in the passing trains that he was as big a chief as they were. He wore custom-made suits, he traveled in private rail cars, and became close friends with President Teddy Roosevelt. Roosevelt actually went hunting with him in the big pasture. Imagine the President of the United States and the man who once scalped settlers sitting around a campfire together. But Quanah never gave up his Comanche identity. He refused to cut his hair. He refused to give up his 7 wives, telling the government, "You go tell them which ones I should get rid of." He also became a founder of the Native American Church, using the peyote ceremony to help his people navigate the trauma of their lost world. Quanah Parker died in 1911. He was buried next to his mother, Cynthia Ann, whose body he had moved from Texas to Oklahoma so they could finally be together. He lived through the most violent transition in American history. He saw the buffalo disappear and the automobile arrive. And at his funeral, over 2,000 people attended. Comanches in traditional dress, Texas ranchers in Stetsons, and government officials in suits. He had done the impossible. He had preserved the Comanche soul while thriving in a world that tried to kill it. He was the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, all at once. A bridge that spanned the bloodiest gap in the West. If you go to Fort Sill today, you can visit his grave. It says, "Resting here until day breaks, and shadows fall and darkness disappears, is Quanah Parker, the last chief of the Comanches." I'm Zach Hansen. This has been Bobcat Cherry. The hill country has a long memory, but none longer than the eagle who flew over the Palo d'Oro.